Hello and welcome to Ideagen TV. Today we have an amazing power panel of global leaders led by Chaitra Vedullaplli, the co-founder of Women in Cloud and the co-founder and CMO of Meylah. Chaitra, welcome.
Thank you, John, for having me here. I'm really delighted. So first is good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the audience who are watching us. First is thank you to each one of you for being here with us today. We are really grateful to George and the entire Ideagen team for giving us opportunity to advance the UN goals, especially around the gender equality, creating innovative solutions, and doing public-private partnership. And can you believe it's our lives completely changed forever? It was last year where we went into lockdown. We are all working from our homes. The election to remember, 10 million jobs lost, 7 million people behind the rents. And we are dealing with this kind of a crisis that humans have never seen in this history that we have seen over the last few years. So now let me paint the current landscape that we believe is constituting to a global crisis for women during the pandemic. The first one is around the lack of representation. 30 years ago, the computing women workforce was 36%, but in 2019, the number has fallen to 27%. And that has created a massive gap of 8 million women in the tech workforce, while every business on the planet is becoming a digital business driven by pandemic. The second one is increased displacement of women-held jobs. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, due to the COVID-19, the pandemic has displaced over 2.2 million women, and also estimating that 180 million women will lose their jobs in the next 20 years due to the AI transformation. And the third one is the lack of supplier diversity allocation. Today, only 3% of the corporate procurement dollars and 5% of federal contracts are going to women-owned companies. And this situation is made worse by investors reducing their funding in the women-led companies, and that is going to less than 2%. So at Women in Cloud, we have taken an audacious goal to create $1 billion in economic access for female tech founders to working with the Fortune 1000 companies and also the policymakers. Today, we have 3 thought leaders who will guide us to rethink and reimagine the world where the gender equity and inclusion can be achieved while also creating a sustainable economic access for women around the world. And I would like to welcome Christine Bongard, Heidi Lorenzen, and Sharan Hildebrand. So let me do a quick introduction of that. Heidi Lorenzen is perhaps the most familiar face to some, as this is a topic that she is very passionate about and committed to. Heidi is currently a senior vice president at Accela, which is the provider of cloud solutions for state and local governments worldwide. Immediately prior, she ran marketing at Singularity University, where she shares the Ideagen's vision of solving global grand challenges through technology and community. Heidi's extensive background as a high-impact global marketing professional also includes well-known brands as Polycom and Business Week. Heidi isn't just about the 9 to 5, though her hobbies are leadership positions where she can spearhead impact. She is the president of Women Executive Channel Advisory Board, where she and I first met. She's a member and also a mentor of the Women in Cloud Network. She's also a business mentor at a couple of startup accelerators, including specific to the AI-driven companies, and one at the UC Berkeley focused on IT solution that generates social and economic benefit. She's also a member of Athena Alliance, which unlocks access for women on boards and in the C-suite, and a board member of Rising International, a global nonprofit that provides women experiencing poverty and exploitation and entrepreneur paths to self-sufficiency. We also have Sharon Hildebrand. She is the North America Vice President of Alliances for Hitachi Solutions. As a sales and alliance leader in the technology industry for 30 years, Sharon brings her passion for supporting women in leadership roles and elevating the next generation of female leader to the customer and partner relationships alike. She's the board member of VCAP, advisory board member of Women in Cloud, member of Women in Cloud Business Accelerator Collective, and a regional lead for the Women in Tech Network. Sharon also is the founder of MSH Empowers, or MSHE, a platform and community committed to helping women re-entering the workforce by connecting them to careers in technology. And the last, we have Christine Bongard, an entrepreneur and an executive in the technology industry with a passion for supporting women's career journey in technology. Christine co-founded the Women in Tech Network, a global nonprofit focused on education, inspiring and empowering businesswomen throughout all stages of their careers. Working together with corporations in the industry, Women in Tech Network works to skill up, inspire, and mentor women who are looking to grow their careers in management and leadership positions. Whether women are in technology today, have been displaced from COVID, or in underserved communities, Women in Tech Network is helping women aspiring to grow into a leadership positions or looking for a career shift into the technology sector. The Women in Tech Network is a proud partner of Women in Cloud and also stands shoulder to shoulder as we move forward, fighting for a better tomorrow for all women. So ladies, welcome to the Ideagen TV. So what I would like to do today is have you guys talk about is what do you talk about is passionately talk about a topic for 20 minutes without a preparation. And also, why are you so passionate about advancing economic access for everyone in your networks? So I'll start with you, Heidi.
Okay. Thank you, Chaitra. Pleasure to be here. To your first question about a topic I could talk passionately about, the first thing that pops to mind is something that I'm being asked to talk a lot about, and that's meditation. As serendipity would have it, I took a course and was certified in meditation just prior to the pandemic, and what a gift that's been throughout lockdown. And so I could go on and on about the benefits of that. As to why I'm so passionate about advancing economic access for women. So for me, that ultimately means a safer and more peaceful and more equitably abundant and more sustainable world. And to me, that also looks like a much happier world. And we all know there's been shown that when women are empowered, the benefits are extended to their children and their communities. And so that creates a network effect. And in corporate and organizational terms, empowered women create better financial outcomes, profitability, and one could even say more highly functional work environments. And so I look at economic access for women across 3 layers, and I commit my time so I can show up in support of all of them. So just quickly, the first are those women who are experiencing extreme poverty. So we all know women experience higher rates of poverty, full stop. And we also know that we're already off track to end poverty, according to the UN's goal, and the pandemic only made that worse. I'm on the board, as you mentioned, of a nonprofit called Rising International, and it really takes a unique approach to leverage the best of women to here locally and globally to support each other. It creates social entrepreneurs out of them. So that's very meaningful to me. Secondly, the second layer, if you will, are women who are gainfully employed but are being asked to do too much and probably not being paid enough to do it. They're a full-time employee, they're probably a full-time educator right now of their children, they're a full-time home manager, maybe a caretaker. And so, reaching points of burnout and probably facing constraints of growth opportunities. So giving her, in this case, access to shared workload at home, pay equity, flexible work arrangements, and more would definitely boost the situation. And what I try to do here is show up as a leader in my own company to support these, which takes me to the third, and that is women in leadership roles. Women, when they're in leadership positions, whether in a large company, a startup, government, nonprofits, or even just leading movements, these are the women that are having the most immediate and extensive impact. And so this is an area incredibly important to me. And as you mentioned, as president of the Women's Executive Channel Advisory Board, we advocate and advise to help elevate women in leadership in tech, because the tech sector can definitely benefit from these. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about that later.
Absolutely. Thank you, Heidi. Very well said. Now going to Christine, what can you talk about passionately for 20 minutes without preparation? And you've been also championing a lot of economic access. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so that was, you know me well, Chaitra. That was hard for me to narrow down just a few things that that I could talk about. But I think I would say travel. That's something that I'm really passionate about. COVID has really hit me hard in that respect. I just love getting out and seeing the world and learning of new cultures and, just really expanding my horizons. And I'm really proud of my travel journeys over the years, being to 45 of the 50 states. I only have a few left to tick that off, and visiting many provinces in Canada and in Latin America, and then also almost all of the European countries. So I certainly have stories from each, and I love to share that with people when I speak. But almost just importantly is where I have yet to travel, which is my bucket list. And I'm looking at places like Thailand and Africa and Iceland and even Australia, some of the places that I'd like to go. So for me, travel it fulfills my soul. It refreshes me, recharges me for all the work that I have going on otherwise. And it's something that, I really plan to make a part of the rest of my life. As far as economic access, look, the global economy, just doesn't work for women, right? Unpaid care work, lack of job security, pay inequities. In some countries, we have poor working conditions and even increased violence against women. And all of this undermines women's rights. So women can't earn a living, take control of their lives. And even now, we're all familiar with the stats that you just talked about with regard to 2.2 million women having been impacted in 2020. So women's economic empowerment is really central to realizing women's rights and gender equality. When more women work, the economy grows. And there was a McKinsey report that documents, I think it was called Women Matter, that companies greatly benefit from increasing employment and leadership opportunities for women. And so, that's what I'm here to do. I'm trying to work with corporations, corporate America, to say what programs can we put in place to either be formal mentorship programs where we can help, sponsor and mentor the women in the organization, the rising stars, so to speak, and prepare them to grow up into the leadership positions and get to the board seats. Or also, can we build a career journey program where we take some of the women that have been displaced, some of the women in underrepresented communities, and sponsor them on maybe a 2-year journey, right? Preparing them with the skills, the education, the mentoring, and the executive coaching to get them ready to fill the seats in management and leadership and board seats. And, we've heard all the statistics, it was just mentioned that women boards with companies that have 3 or more women in the management positions, leadership positions, board seats have, higher profits and higher revenues and greater employee satisfaction and greater customer retention. And those are all things that are all good for the world and good for all people. And so that's what economic access means to me.
Thank you, Christine. First is you talked about all the countries where you want to go. India was not there. So if you are going to India, let me know. I will take you to the, what you call as the palace tour, because that would be really spectacular. But you are right. Like, the type of crisis that we are dealing is at a very record speed, and the crisis, I think not one person can solve it. We have to really think about is a collective power and collective action and influence to really help advance women into powerful position to really make changes in our ecosystem. So Sharon, I will have you talk about what do you passionately can talk about for 20 minutes without preparation, and what does economic access means to you?
Thank you, Chaitra. And I honestly could sit and listen to Christine's travel stories for more than 20 minutes. I'm hooked already. So let me know when you are signing up to deliver that message. I'd love to learn more.
Absolutely.
From a topic for me, it's creative partnering and leveraging your passions and taking what you know and love and combining that with your day job, that which feeds your face. I am a big advocate, and especially I've been given a great gift in the role that I'm currently at in Hitachi Solutions to take my passion and mission for helping women, elevating that next level of generation of female leader, and combining that with the partnerships and the alliances that I'm forming both with Microsoft and with our ISV communities. When you can take a business and its goals and match and marry that with an initiative, with a good cause, that's when the real magic and great power takes place. So again, I'm fortunate enough to be part of a great and very supportive ecosystem, and strongly believe that partnering and marrying your passion with your career is definitely the way to focus and going forward. With regards to economic access, if you would have asked me this question pre-COVID, I definitely would have emphasized the word improve, and doing everything I could to improve a woman's position, improve her career, improve her education. But unfortunately now, current state, it's about recovery. So when I think about economic access and where we have gone backwards, you shared a lot of staggering, terrifying stats actually. And think about what the mountain that we have left to climb, the gap that currently exists. And the UN actually just, they released a report last year, and they talked about how the lack of economic access and a lack of education actually contributes, has almost tripled the amount of domestic violence that we're hearing now. Women just aren't empowered and don't have the resources to escape unhealthy relationships, unhealthy, if they have to work and it's an unhealthy situation, it's hard for them to turn around and just find another job. But it's the domestic violence and it's the abuse part, I think, the non-monetary tied ramifications that we're seeing, that fallout that is so terrifying. So economic access, it's actually led into survival. And what can we do to give these women not just the confidence, but the resources that they need in order to better their situation, better their family situation as well. The report also goes on to talk about 5 things. So it's not just all what's bad, but I encourage people to look it up. It's UN Women. It's from September of last year. They do call out 5 things that businesses and government can do to focus on. But one of the last things that I had not thought about that I think is important to share, that has now been added to my list of why it's so important and the pivot of my mission as far as addressing economic access for women, is that younger generation. 11 million women by the time COVID, they estimate will end, will have left school, will have not dropped out of school and not had education. And previous pandemics, recessions have proven that majority of those women will never return. So what can we do? That's a whole generation, a whole field of women that should be improving themselves and have mentorship and be excited about changing the world, that now have been robbed of their education because they have to go and support their families best that they can, or worse, they are abused of some of the same circumstances that I talked about earlier. So unfortunately, I would have led with improve a year ago, but now economic access, defined for me, is about recovery and what we can do to accelerate that.
Absolutely. I think as all of you talked about, these are deep and big issues. So let's dig in. We want to talk about the representation, the education, AI, and enterprise opportunities. So I'll open up the first question. We know we want to get more representation. There's a gap of 8 million women in the tech industry, and to really drive the gender equality, what are some of these strategies out there to increase the representation for women in the leadership, in the board, and also in the industry? So I will start with you, Christine, and then I'll go with Heidi and then Sharon.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was going to say that, Chaitra, I would address really the first part of the question, which was more about how do we get 8 million women into the tech industry and reach gender equality, a little bit more than just focusing on the part about the boards. I feel that, kind of goes beyond that, right? If it's about women being more equally represented, then we need to reach the hiring managers throughout the entire organization, right? The frontline managers who are, hiring the individual contributors and the other level hiring managers. If we want to reach gender equality, I just feel that it's a little bit more than just at the board level. And what we're finding, interestingly, at the WIT Network, when we are meeting with the HR team and the D&I team and the ERGs for women, that's what a lot of what they're coming to us for is, how can we help educate and mentor and train the management at all levels of the company, right? And so if we want to, though, more globally encourage, educate, and empower the 8 million women into the tech industry, it goes a little bit beyond just that, right? We have to also focus on legislation. What efforts can we make to incentivize the companies to reach gender parity within their own organizations at management and leadership levels by, X date? Barriers, we've got to look at the industry, the barriers for women, that hold women back from even trying to go for these opportunities. And I think that a lot of that has to do with not only education, but mentoring them on confidence, assisting them with childcare and flexible work schedules, and also even maybe some work placement subsidies for companies. And then lastly, and this is something that recently I've been feeling really emotional about and really charged up, and I'm going to try to find a way to, maybe speak about it more, write about it more, but it's the idea of really taking a chance on these women. And, how can we encourage private and public companies to open their doors to more women who may have been recently trained, but not necessarily through traditional educational institutions, right? We need to remove those traditional barriers that are preventing women from, entering back into the organizations or even rising up in the organizations. And we need for these companies to take a chance on these women. And that is something that is probably going to happen more through, grassroots storytelling and inspirational efforts. But I really feel strongly that we have to all be a little bit more open-minded and, let down some of these traditional barriers in order to let the women in and rise up.
And Christine, very well said, because one thing that stood out to me, which is the legislation work and incentivizing the companies to make sure that they are bringing the gender equality within the company, because each company can do a fantastic job. And if you're ever going in the direction of creating a bill or a policy, count us in. I'm all in for that, right?
Wouldn't it be great, though? Wouldn't it be great?
Yes. So going to Heidi, what about you, Heidi? How are you looking at the representation, and what are some strategies that companies or public policy makers can really take those advice and incorporate?
Yeah, and first of all, I love, Christine, what you just said about taking a chance. I think that is often a first step to driving change. Just try it on for size. And I have a sense that the women that are given those chances are not going to let companies or governments or whoever's taking a chance on them, let them down. I also agree very much with Christine that we do need to think about this holistically as building a pipeline. So starting with getting women in tech, then evolving them to leadership, and then ultimately onto boards. And so since she did such a great job of talking about discussing the barriers of getting women into tech and kind of nurturing them into leadership, I will jump to the board question. The statistics are quite dire in terms of representation of women on boards of the Russell 3000. Only 5% have gender balanced boards. And what's great is there are ways that we can actually measure that and track that. And so there is policy being put into place to ensure that gender parity over time, but we have a long way to go. So one key action that anybody can take is to engage in and support those organizations that are very much focused on ensuring equity in the boardroom, gender equity in the boardroom. So 50-50 women on boards is something I'd encourage you to look into. The Athena Alliance, the Board List, Chief, etc. There are a number of organizations that are doing fantastic work of both educating women themselves to ensure that they are board ready and to overcome their own, so often mental blockers of that may be holding them back to taking that step in their career. But they also, these organizations are working with investors and shareholders and really carrying forth the message of the value of women on boards. I'd also encourage, to the degree that you may have access to investors or shareholders yourself, have those conversations. And, just the more that you bring it up, I think the more that they then see the opportunity and the value. I'm going to actually throw out an idea too that is perhaps off the beaten path of typical ways of kind of bringing women on board and boards, and that is when you think about a pipeline of moving up to boards. Traditionally, boards have been filled with finance operations, those types of backgrounds, and women also are not very strongly represented in those areas. So it's two things are happening at once. So women are more represented in functions like human resources, marketing, etc. So, and those functions are increasingly valuable to boards. So, if you're just looking at financials and operations, you're going to miss some blind spots, particularly now, blind spots in the market, or blind spots in people and performance issues. So marketing and HR actually support these, and women hold the lion's share of these roles. I think it's something 76% in HR are women. And so this could help kind of accelerate that pipeline. It serves two purposes. It brings other perspectives that are very necessary to boards today, and it creates more opportunity and openness to getting women on boards. And last thing I'll say is that if indeed you are a woman in leadership and potentially on the board track, put yourself out there, let people know, and ask, and just make sure that we do get more board representation.
Oh, very, very well said, Heidi. I completely agree. Is building the pipeline and also kind of creating is a new set of opportunities on the board is very critical. So, Sharon, do you have anything to add to this discussion?
Yes, and actually I want to commend Heidi for that call to action. I too am a cohort with her with the Athena Alliance, and I didn't know what I didn't know with regards to raising my hand and making myself a little bit vulnerable when I was exploring a pay board decision. And there are a sea of people out there that are eager and ready to help you, that share your mindset. So I'm very glad that you closed with that, Heidi. I'd like to take and address the leadership and the board question with a challenge, or highlighting that we need an increase in male management and board support, and specifically with regards to unconscious bias. So we are, as women, part of this conversation. We're pushing each other up that hill. We have all this great energy, sharing best practices and tons of support. And there should be more men that are already at the top of the hill, leaning over, putting their hand out to pull us up. That's how we accelerate the process. And even the best intended manager or board member, and I've had conversations with these men, don't realize that there's still an unconscious bias that they manage. And when they catch themselves, whether it's a comment or when they're going through a process of making a decision, they need to be constantly reminded of minding that. I had the pleasure of monitoring a panel a few years ago, and one of the male panelists told a story of his manager at the time, who was well known in the company for being a huge supporter of women and raising them to executive levels. And there was a bring your child to work day. And the story goes, they were standing as a team, 8 or 10 of them around, and there was one woman on their team. And one of the kids, a couple of the people's children, were just getting unruly. They were getting loud. And this manager, who was known as a big supporter of women in tech and women in leadership, turned to the one female in the group and asked her to go mind the kids and keep them quiet until they reconvened. And it wasn't until afterwards, the gentleman who was telling the story said that he approached his manager and said, "Did you realize what you just did?" And he was horrified. So a lot of awareness, I think, needs to be made, and there's a lot of room for improvement. In 2016, actually Obama's his first term, I don't know if you remember, he had 2/3 of his top aides were men. And there was a bit of an uproar, and it hit the media and caught on very quickly when the women and that were part of his organization were tired of getting talked over. We're tired of getting mansplained. And they came up with a concept or a solution they called amplification. So, and this is a way that we can, as women right now, present day, actively help each other elevate and have our voices heard. So when a female at the conferencing table would say something, share an idea, land a message, the women made sure that first they recognized her by saying her name, great idea, Chaitra, that was excellent, and then would reconfirm what she said. That way, there wasn't a man in the room that could take over, assume the idea as his own, or do mansplaining. Obama's second term, it's known that his top aide diversity actually was pretty close to parity, was almost 50-50%. So it's a ground up grassroots, but just I thought a really interesting tactic that I've always remembered and thought was pretty incredible.
Sharon, very, very well said, because the amplification and acknowledging other women who are with you around is so critical, and removing the bias. Lately, if you have seen on the Netflix, like there are a lot of mini stories coming out in different languages, which are actually addressing those biases, is how women are treated and what you need to do to take change. And because they're changing through media, it's been pretty fantastic. So going to the next question is around the cloud education. And I would say is, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, women are disproportionately financially affected by COVID-19, accounting for 54.5% of the overall net job loss since Feb of 2020, leaving more than 2.2 million women unemployed. So my question to Sharon, I'll start with you, is what type of education that we need to make it available for women to be retrained or re-enter the workforce? And once you are done, Christine, I would love you to add your insights.
So I'm taking a different spin in answering this question. When we talk about the opportunity with the cloud economy, I think most people think technology. And there is a huge pool of women, untapped and unfortunately growing due to COVID, that are going to be looking to re-enter the workforce. But even before COVID and the crazy math that took place, there was the sea of women that existed with regards to gaps, having gaps in the resume, and trying to determine how they were going to explain that in an interview and rebuild their network, not quite sure knowing where to start. So I think that education first begins with some of those core basics, those core fundamentals. But more importantly, I believe when we talk about women in leadership roles, the mentorship streams they're going to get there. We're going to invest in the high school women and the women just entering the workforce and make sure they stay excited about technology and STEM-related jobs. But technology and STEM-related companies, they need non-technologists also. So I think there's a great opportunity to take these women that are re-entering the workforce that may not have technical skills or know where to start, and prioritize technology companies, or have the technology companies raise their hands and say, yes, we need HR managers, we need finance people, we need sales people. And that's a way that we can have women injected at the mid to upper level management right away, and we can accelerate their path to leadership faster. It's been known that 53% of women in their mid-30s actually leave the technology industry to go to different industries. So there's 53% of women that leave the technology industry in their mid-30s. Out of that, only 20% are leaving to start families. And so what that says is more than 50% of that 53 are leaving because of lack of mentorship, because they don't see themselves. There's not a vision or a model of themselves in a corner office somewhere of a female leading a team or being CEO. So the awareness needs to start around this group of women as well. And I think people don't realize just how large that stat is and the kind of impact that it could have. But if we can start by assisting with the placement and education of the IT companies that we work with, network with, where we have connections, and increase their awareness to women that are reentering the workforce, but not necessarily have to be technical or have those skills, but we can just polish their project management skills or again, their finance accounting skills. I think the technology and STEM overall can benefit greatly.
Sharon, I completely agree with you. The awareness that you don't really need to have the technology skills to be in the tech industry. That is a notion that people have, and they get afraid of it, just knowing tech, and people say, I don't want to go into that industry. So Christine, what are you doing to address the education for women so they can re-enter the workforce or really get to the leadership roles?
Yeah, so basically our efforts are really around twofold, trying to help women scale and grow in their company on the leadership track, but also open some women up to the idea of switching careers into more technical roles, right? And so, we've sort of been focused on how do we help inspire some women that are mid-career to start to look at technology as roles. But as Sharon mentioned, there's so many women now displaced, or women, returning from work, from childcare and whatnot. There are other reasons, underrepresented communities as well. How can we take these large amounts of women and begin to educate them and train them and bring them into the workforce, right? So looking at it from a little bit of a different angle, although I completely agree with Sharon about mentorship and coaching layered with the education is key. It isn't just about the training. And I'm really passionate about that, right? So, okay, yes, we need accessible and flexible training that does not cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, right? We need flexibility, being that the participants can be both remote and also take the training on demand as they balance their family and their kids, right? We need investment from organizations that have the ability to scale this training to thousands of people at a time. We don't have time to do cohorts of 20 people. We need to start to reach these women in mass and train them on core technologies and in disciplines where women are not represented, such as AI, which has been mentioned here before, cybersecurity, and obviously cloud computing. But after that, I feel too that it then has to go to the mentoring piece, right? Who's going to provide career coaching? Who's going to help them with setting out a career path and setting targets for them and helping them understand how their career may unfold over time? And then, even more important possibly, is the support of a network around them as they proceed on this journey. And that's a lot of what I love about the WIT network, is that there are so many different ways for women to surround themselves with other women as they embark on training, education, coaching paths, whatever it is. So, just having people there for them for those days when they've lost confidence, for those days when they're dealing with imposter syndrome. We've all been there, to have a collective group of people around them who will challenge them and tell them, go for it, you've got this. Sometimes it's just that little bit of encouragement that makes the big difference between a woman dropping out and quitting or sticking with something. And so I feel really important that the solutions we build, have to layer upon have to layer upon each other. And so let me tell you a quick story. We launched our first 50-person scholarship cloud power training program on Azure for women in 2020. And when we opened it up, the applications up, we had 80 women apply in less than 12 hours, which I could not believe, and I was completely thrilled to see. We focused on ensuring that a minimum of our students were 40% women of color, and we saw that the certification pass rate of the group was 40% higher than the average training class. And I believe the reason why is because they did it together as a cohort. They had a support system. They were not an individual, studying on their own and trying to pass through. They did it as a team, and they had a coach. They had a training coach helping them along their journey. So my point being is that it's not just about the training, but the support system that surrounds the students and the women on their journey. And I feel we strongly need to shift from these small efforts of training to, training more like 1,000 women, in a day in these cohorts.
So well said, Christine. And if we share a story that kind of combines with kind of the support system, we actually did a digital capstone project during our WIC summit. Instead of really having the volunteers try to figure out, we actually made them through an education, gave them the support system, and gave them the network of volunteers could help each other. They were more ready on technologies than they would have gone by themselves, because they found the buddy system. They knew a project that was there, and they could learn real life scenarios, right? And they could talk about with a recruiter of how they were advancing and contributing to the company. So as you talked about AI, so for the interest of time, we'll focus on the AI piece. We know, according to the IMF, which anticipates like 11% of the job currently that are held by women are at risk of elimination as a result of AI and other, digital technologies. But they're also projecting that there is a greater chance, or 70% or higher probability of the future automation that can happen, that translate to 180 million women-led jobs will be eliminated over 20 years. 180 million jobs. So I'm going to start with you, Heidi. Is this force is coming, and we really need to think about the strategies to proactively ensure that the corporation and the companies are not displacing women as their strategy because of the AI advancement. Do you have any ideas we should be looking into?
I have a couple sort of perspectives to share first that I think will help with that. First of all, I think it's important for all genders to shift their mindset, have a more open mindset about the relationship between humanity and AI. If it's out there, if we take that kind of fear-based black and white mentality, unnecessary fears could lead to poor outcomes in and of itself. So, a lot of the fear is based on the concept of the singularity, when machines are going to, intelligence is going to exceed that of humans. And what that's essentially saying is that we believe that our humanity looks a lot like a computer, that essentially it's information processing. And we are so much more than that. And so if we step back from that fear of AI and look at it as something, as a catalyst for positive change and how we can leverage it, I think that in and of itself can open up a lot of opportunities. Now, having said that, we do absolutely need to empower leaders, again, of all genders, to build AI that's equitable, fair, and just. And, as we've talked about, sort of the innate skill sets of women, whether it's, being more empathetic, more collaborative, kind of seeing the bigger picture sometimes, we therefore absolutely need that female perspective in shaping AI and shaping that future. And so we definitely need to move in that direction. So the third thing I'd like to say is that while millions have lost their job, and women definitely have had a disproportionate share of that, 85 million jobs are predicted to be lost by 2025 due to automation. There's also studies that show that 97 million new jobs are going to be created. And so if you think about the technology shifts that we've seen, I mean, just take the internet, for example, we all feared so many jobs were going to be lost. And yes, in fact, they were, but they were also replaced by other new types of jobs, web designers, data scientists, et cetera, and created thousands of new companies that are worth trillions of dollars. So I think that's where, let's put the focus on that new and upskill and train women in those new jobs. So it comes very much back to what both Sharon and Christine were talking about with the training. We are essentially going through a double disruption right now with the pandemic, and then these AI driven shifts. So it's pretty critical that we address this quickly, but there's a lot of opportunity for women.
Heidi, a very well shared perspective. The 97 million new jobs are going to be created. So we don't really have to worry about just the losing, but there's also a lot of things that are happening. So we as a collective have to figure out. Sharon, do you have any perspective to share on this one?
Yes, actually, I tapped our data science team in preparation for this, and I was so pleasantly surprised that our chief data scientist first agreed with the assessment of the question. He said, absolutely, this is spot on correct. And then in capital letters, this is so important. So some of the feedback from the team, and I thought this initial issue was brilliant, that we need to accept some levels of job protection and economically meter what we're doing with AI. And he paralleled it to, if you injure yourself, you're not going to go through physical therapy and rush to it. They're going to take the time and make sure that you're healing and that each step of the PT is being implemented properly. Moving forward with an AI initiative, we need to meter and monitor each stage and each case as well, and make sure that we keep that health check. We have that barometer handy with regards to what is the actual impact economically. And even we've talked about DEI impact as well, depending on what's being built. And then the other and he actually thought really big. The other idea was at a government federal level, make sure that there are AI impact and governance committees, and take that and perhaps apply it down to the project level, where you have parity in the group, you have equal women and men working together and monitoring and measuring the impact of this AI solution, how you're delivering it, where it's going to land, and what the net potential negative impact would be.
Thank you, Sharon. This was great. So we are at the tail end of our discussion. So I would like all three of you to share any resources and communities that people can be part of, and also any final words of wisdom for the community as they are looking at these big, bold issues that needs to really be converted into opportunities. So I'll start with you, Christine.
Okay, great. Well, I would close with saying, if you are a woman in technology and you are looking to connect and network with women around the globe, and you are looking to be inspired and have some training and education opportunities, then please join us. We are at thewitnetwork.com, and we would love to welcome you as a member. If you're a leader, an executive in a company, and you're looking to partner with an organization to support the women in your organization and bring this content in and provide it as a service to your organization, then please connect with me as well, because that is a big part of our mission right now. And I think a big part of what we're trying to do for all of these initiatives is to work with companies to inspire them to make some pledges about putting in mentoring programs, and also planning career paths for women to get them up into leadership positions, the C-suite, and then to their boards. So I would love to work with you on that. My closing comment on all of this, I loved being on this panel. I loved hearing from Heidi and Sharon, and I agree with everything they said. I found myself actually getting a little emotional with some of the stuff, because we have a lot of work to do. But my parting words are, let's go at it together. It's better to partner together, better together with other people than to try to do everything by yourself. It just can't be done. And when organizations come together to do things, we can move faster and we can be more productive, and in the end, reach more women and have greater success. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Christine. Sharon.
Yeah, again, thank you, Chaitra, for this opportunity. And ladies, actually, I have wonderful personal relationships with both of these fantastic women, so it's been an absolute honor to share this experience with you. So 2 quick things. MSHempowers.com is a building community and platform for women re-entering the workforce. So if you are looking for coaching, guidance, research, and want to crowd share best practices, sign up again on mshempowers.com. And my email, Hildebrand at Hitachi Solutions. Also feel free to use that if you are a woman-owned business, or if you are part of a company that has a strong corporate social responsibility or diversity and inclusion program. We want to connect with you from an alliance standpoint. So we are building that pillar within our organization because it's very important, and in my opinion, more is better. So thank you. Thank you again, Chaitra.
Thank you, Sharon. Heidi.
Yeah, whether you're focused on, women in extreme poverty and trying to help them gain access, or focused on women in leadership trying to enter board, that's a huge, huge spectrum there. There are so many resources available, and we've mentioned a couple of them, and I'm happy to elaborate more. But for poverty, the organization Rising International, Ashoka, Global Fund for Women, all fantastic organizations doing really great work and making massive change. And then, as I mentioned, on women in leadership and boards, there's Athena Alliance, the 50/50 board, etc. And for those who are also just trying to understand the crazy pace of technological change right now, and what it means and how we can actually leverage it for good, I can't help but give a shout out to my former employer, Singularity University. There's so much information there that's helpful. And my final word is to I recommend that everybody just imagine in really, really vivid detail what the world could and would look like when women are holding up half the sky, to use a Chinese proverb there. Just imagine what that could look like. And that's what we're all working toward. As I said at the beginning, I envision that as a safer, more sustainable, more peaceful, happier world. So think about what that could look like, and what does that look like to you? And with that image in mind, have the courage every day to show up and do something, whether it's in your own world where you can impact in your day job, no matter how small it is, and have the generosity to be able to support the organizations that you've heard from all of us today with your time, your brains, and even your money, and just keep that vision you've imagined front and center. And it's been such a pleasure to be on this panel with you, Chaitra, and Christine and Sharon. Lots of shout outs to all the great work that they're doing.
So first is, I am so inspired just to knowing that we as a community are shaping the future together for all women in the tech industry, knowing that every business is becoming digital, they're going to adopt cloud and AI. But as communities, we are forming those deep partnerships and creating that support system that each woman is looking for, or a group of women is looking for. The thing that I took away is hashtag Women Matters. I think, Christine, that is something you have to coin that and create a campaign around it, especially around the bill, which creates a gender inclusion. That I think stood out very vividly. I think we have to think about some kind of a policy recommendation. But as and I'm really lucky to really working with all of you and championing some programs in the ecosystem. So I want to conclude this panel and thank Ideagen for giving us the opportunity. So as you're listening to this particular panel, if you want to get involved with Women in Cloud, which is an economic development organization and really a community-led, to really drive $1 billion in economic access. And if that particular mission really resonates with you, I invite you to explore 3 things. If you're looking for a job or you're looking for entry into the ecosystem, please just submit your profile and we will get you connected into the networks where the employers are there. And that was in partnership with Christine and Sharon and also Heidi. We will make that possible. If you're an entrepreneur looking to really build a successful solution for the enterprise market, really recommend you to sign up for the Cloud Accelerator, and that gives you an immersive learning to get there. And the last one is, we cannot really grow without a professional growth and also the professional connections that we need. So please get connected within the Women in Cloud and Ideagen events and really unlock those opportunities for you. So take a moment to reach out to our website and see what's in for you. Go to womenincloud.com, or you can join our digital community. Again, thank you, ladies, for being here. You did fantastic. I'm leaving inspired and saying that we have 97 million jobs in the market that we can influence, and let's go do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.